Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Board. I'd like you to please rise and please say flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, Teal. Teal, always. Good job. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Act has been given by the clerk in the following manner: posted on the bulletin board in the Borough Clerk's office, emailed to the Retrospect and the Courier Post. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chairwoman Cleveland.
Yes.
Mr. White.
Here.
Ms. Gushin. Here. Mr. Chowski.
Excused.
Mr. Vanella.
Here.
Mr. Alkerley.
Here.
Mr. Laverty.
Mayor Caponis on vacation, he's excused.
Mr. Ranieri.
Here.
Ms. Dodds.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Rowan.
Here.
Mr. Bach.
Here.
And Mr. Knight.
Here.
There's a motion on the floor for the approval of the May 8th minutes. We did not have a June meeting, so the approval of the minutes would be for the May 8th meeting as submitted. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Motion by Mr. Ockley. Second, Mrs. Gushin, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Under old business, we have resolution 19-10. Mr. Rowan.
Yes, that was a resolution for a use variance with permission to continue in existing setbacks. This was a residentially used structure which lays within our commercial zoning district. We granted the approval, condition that the structure be built on the existing foundation, and we gave the applicant permission to continue to use the existing setbacks.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to adopt the resolution? Mr. Vanella?
Second.
Mr. Ockley, will you have roll call, please?
Mrs. Cleveland.
Yes.
Ms. Gushin. Yes. Mr. Vanella.
Yes.
Mr. White.
Yes.
Mr. Alkerley.
Yes.
Mr. Ranieri.
Yes.
Is that a you? Can he vote on that?
He did,
Use variance.
you can't vote on that. Go to your room.
I did both alternates sit in the
For the next application.
Ms. Dodds
Yes.
and Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Okay. Under new business, we're going to go to 19-03 for Brian Schneider for bulk variances on the pole barn. We're going to get an application first, so if they want to come up and be heard.
And Madam Chairman, just for the record, so we put on the record, we're going to seek Ms. Dodd and Mr. Lee for Scott and for Fred this evening.
That's fine. And also for the record, full disclosure, just want to make it known that Brian's a customer of mine at Lakeview Custom Codes. I do a lot of work on his personal cars and whatnot. I fully intend to be objective. If anyone has an objection to me sitting for this application, I will recuse myself. Okay, want to put that on record?
Myself too, but I've dealt with Brian in the past, so everyone knows.
On a professional basis, but we're all
Correct.
Brian's a friend of mine as well.
okay. Okay.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
So I'm here to apply for variance to build a new pole barn at 295 Sunset. As per the application, I'd like to build a 32 by 50 pole barn.
Brian, can I interrupt you just
Yes.
one second? Raise your right hand, I want to swear you in.
Sure.
Okay,
Sorry.
you're going to give testimony, and Steve, gentlemen, you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony you're going to give this board tonight is truthful and accurate to the best of your knowledge.
I did. So I wanted to build a 32 by 50 pole barn for storage of cars that I have. I collect classic cars. And so I wanted to do a 32 by 50 with a 20 foot 9 inch peak And I understand the limit is 18 on the height. The reason why I'm requesting the 20-foot 9, when we did the drawings, I wanted to go with more of a pitch that matches the new house, rather than the roof to be flat. So it's more for aesthetics than anything. So that's why it would be over on the height, and obviously the size exceeds the limit. The percentage, I'd be at 27% lot coverage. I talked to my wife about taking down the front porch, so in lieu of the pole barn, that didn't work. So.
Didn't fly, did it?
No, it didn't work. So,
Didn't think so.
so that's why I'm going for a variance on the coverage. And, you know, I understand water runoff is a big thing, not only in Runnemede, but all over. You know, we all live in New Jersey, and we're all dealing with rain, you know, constantly, it seems. So we're being proactive, and we're putting a line that runs from the roof at the pole barn all the way out to the street. So all of the connections would be underground for the water runoff from the roof of the pole barn to go out directly to the street. And that's in the plan.
I don't think it can go up the street. I don't think it's only one. I think it has to be turned over your property.
I do believe so.
You can't run it on the ground.
We'll defer to Mr. Bach on that. If you have your review letter.
It can be directed towards the street. You can't actually pierce the curb, then there's no curb.
Okay, yeah, we don't have curb.
Yeah, so you can drain it towards the front, but the actual discharge from the pipe has to be on your own property.
Okay.
And then overland flow towards the street.
Right.
It is requested or recommended in our review letter for grading plans. So if you provide or have your engineer just detail what that is.
Right.
That way we can make sure it's acceptable to the borough before you even install it.
Okay, sure, yeah, we would definitely do that. And again, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I rely on the professional I hired, and we would do what's, you know, what's right.
Mr. Bach? is
The only thing I
review
have,
letter?
and I believe the max height is 16 feet for a garage feet, or is it?
I believe you're right.
I believe it's 16 feet, so.
It was 12, now it's 16.
Is it 18?
Revised.
Is it 18 feet?
And
If
then
you
that
send me
draw
that,
to- yeah.
it's not in the codified ordinance, so if you can send me that update just so I have it. Whether it's 16 or 18, it doesn't matter right now, they're so
Right.
exceeding the
Still,
variance.
see, it doesn't matter.
That's just my own information.
Yep.
Other than the grading plan, the applicant has relayed what they're requesting in terms of the size of the proposed garage, and also the height of it, and obviously the max lot coverage in our definition of lot coverage is building coverage. So that's all the buildings on the site, including the garage. So those are the three variances before us this evening, and any approval should be conditioned upon a grading plan submitted for review and approval, and also the grading plan should detail any proposed stormwater drainage that is going to be directed towards the public right of way.
Now, Brian, do you intend on putting any type of a hydraulic lift or anything into the pole barn?
I mean, I don't have any plans on it right now, no.
Just be aware that if you were to want to put a lift in, we really frown upon hydraulics. We would ask you to put electric lift in.
Oh, yeah.
Above ground electric, we don't want the stuff going into the ground.
Yeah, I'm sorry, if I were to ever do a lift, I would do, you know, one of the new, like from
Like a
SR.
9,000 above ground lift.
Right.
How about any lighting concerns? Are you going to have any lighting that's going to encroach upon your neighbors?
No, the only lighting would be similar to what I have on the garage
Straight down?
of the house, yeah, old style, straight down.
Okay.
And I am talking to a landscaper, and I'm going to do live evergreen all around, you know, in the back and on the sides.
Okay.
Now, again, I'm going to respect everyone's privacy.
Is there anyone else from the board have any questions?
Just your side setback, right, is it 16 feet from the side property line to the building? Am I reading that right or not?
Oh, that's the question.
The side of it where it's 32 feet to the, what's the distance there?
talking about the proposed garage?
Yeah. Well,
So on Sunset, they run on an angle, so I'm paralleling the left side of the building, on
there's
this.
5, I got you.
Yeah, and then the back right corner would be 5, and it leaves like a triangular opening in the back.
And that's permitted by our ordinance.
Yeah.
For the accessory structure.
I didn't see that.
Is there any other questions from the board?
You want, in R1 or R2? R2. That's R2.
Anyone else? Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to open up the meeting to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this application, and this application only, please come up and approach the microphone and state your name and address. We'll hear what you have to say.
The public wishing to speak, I make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Oxley, second by Mr. Canal, all in favor?
Aye.
And Mr. Good. Yes, all right?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
You're good. Mr. Rowan.
Yes, the applicant comes before us tonight for a bulk variance to permit him to install a 50 by 32 foot pole barn style garage at his residence located at 295 Sunset Road. He's asking for 3 variances. One variance is regarding the height of the building, where our variant ordinance sets a maximum of 18 feet. The applicant's requesting that he be able to construct the garage at 20 feet 9 inches. He's also requesting the size of the garage to be 50 by 32 feet, where our ordinance sets a maximum at 30 feet by 24 feet. He's also requesting a variance from our ordinance, which states a minimum of 25% of ground coverage, which I think now he is asking for 27% of ground coverage, which is basically the minimum, but he needs a variance anyway. If the board finds that there's sufficient reason for the applicant to be granted the variances as indicated, conditioned on Steve's requirement that the zoning plan be submitted, which will detail the stormwater runoff from the property. And I believe Steve also requested that the applicant shall confirm that the zoning data shown on the variance plan reflects the as-built conditions of the site. That's 2 of the conditions.
Thanks for that, for that.
Okay. So, entertain a motion.
Okay. All right, there's no other questions. We're going to entertain a motion to
Can I
approve.
ask one question?
Certainly,
Yes.
of course.
The proposed asphalt drive, was that included with the impervious?
Yes.
It was.
Well, I just want to be clear. There is no impervious limitation in the R2 zone. So the max building coverage is only for the buildings themselves. There is no limitation in our ordinance for total ground cover in the R2, which might be something that the board might want to consider looking at.
So he could go and pave or cover
The whole lot?
Technically,
Yeah.
yes. Technically,
Note to self.
other than that.
Is it yourself?
Note
Do
to
you know
self.
about that? Did anybody know about that? The R2?
we should be looking at that for the R1 and the R2. The R3 already does have limitations on impervious, but that should be something during the course of the year we look at.
Anyone else? Okay, is there a motion on the floor for a vote on this application?
Make a motion.
Mr. Ockley?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ranieri. Can we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Cleon.
Yes.
Ms. Boucher. Yes. Mr. Canalo.
Yes.
Mr. White.
Yes.
Mr. Oakley.
Yes.
Mr. Ranieri.
Yes.
Ms. Dodds.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes. Okay, Brian, good luck.
Well done.
All right, let's get back with Mr. Bach on the grading, so, okay, before you do anything.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Maybe you go to site plan. This is regular site plan.
Just a regular site.
Yeah. Regular site plan. You're up. Yeah.
Oh, all right, witnesses, okay, and Steve, gentlemen, would you raise your right hand? You solemnly swear or affirm that testimony that you're about to give this board tonight is truthful and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, for the record, I will be stepping down this. I am one of the people within 200 that has to be noticed, so I will be stepping down this. Mr. Ockley will be taking over the chair. And I'm going to go
As long as Andrew doesn't have a problem.
What's that?
As long as Andrew doesn't have a problem, he was my attorney.
I don't know, I don't, it's up to the.
If Joe feels that, there's no conflict, will not influence him one way or the other, and if,
We go, Judge.
okay.
Okay, I'm going to step into the audience. Mr. Ockley will be taking over the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm Andrew Viola, we're still Albano Viola. We're here for our site plan approval. This is block 105, block 1.02. If you're familiar, it's the Toyota site. This is the parcel, the portion of the parcel that abuts the former railroad corridor. A little bit of history, back in 2011, a different applicant, but same Toyota Runnemede came for site plan approval. At that time, a variance was requested for relief from the ordinance that required paving, to leave it as a gravel rather than paving it as the ordinance would have required. Well, then my client, Lou Hernandez, who you'll hear from in a minute, he comes in approximately 2015. He's operating Toyota Runnemede. He thinks it's a good idea, and we'll offer some testimony on that. It's a pretty good idea to pave that area in the back. It's an eyesore and a hazard and everything else. So he goes and paves it in contravention of the former site plan that we'd already obtained a variance that we weren't going to pave it. Mr. Knight picked up on that, went out, spoke to my client. We've been going back and forth a little bit since. We're before the board for site plan approval. We do have a variance for impervious coverage, but our professional will point out that it was pre-existing, actually approved in 2011. And with that introduction, I'd just like to present my client briefly for just an overview, and then we'll hear from our professional, and then if you have any other questions, we'll move on from there. So, Mr. Hernandez, you've been sworn. Explain your position at Toyota and when you came into operation.
Hello, my name is Lou Hernandez. I'm the general manager operator of the store. And obviously, my daily function is operated in any manner that fits for business, along with keeping any town issues up to date, variances, violations, and so forth. So basically, the decision maker. I did arrive July 2015. There's a lot of issues with the store cosmetically, sidewalks. There was pavement of different years of layers on there, fencing. And that's exteriorly. Interiorly, the same. So I just, rolled up my sleeves and made the place look good for business, obviously, along with to be a good neighbor and make sure that we look presentable to the public, along with people that live against us. And that being said, I paved a lot. Not, at that time, I was getting a lot of complaints.
When was that?
I got complaints soon as I got there.
When did you make the decision to pave the parcel?
What were the complaints?
I was getting complaints from the neighbors calling in and telling me that, there's dust. Then there was, it's that portion of it was a gravel base. So, especially in the summer, with no rain, if it's not raining, it would be a lot of dust. And we had cars back there, and to remove a car along that strip, you generally get a lot of movement of debris. So, that being said, over time, and for lack of a better word, I attacked the easier things that needed to be done. I was knifing over, we had sidewalk issues. I just did the whole sidewalk from the diner all the way down to the other side instead of picking little spots to do. There was other concerns with the interior of the building, electrical and all that. We had that all redone. So I was just trying to keep up to speed, but going back to the complaints, that really started, I think it started before me. These people, or the neighbors were really knowledgeable of the history of that place. So I just, that's where I deemed, well, if we're paving, let's just make it all go away. Let's just do the right thing here and move on. And again, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know there was some snow rolled in and told me, we may have an issue here, here's why.
And what was that issue?
I wasn't supposed to pave it, not knowing it. We gave a little education of the past allowance of that area. And, I had a lot of questions, and we went back and forth, and that's where I got Viola involved here to help me out with the bigger town.
We're going to put a pin in that and introduce our professional. And I know there's going to be some more issues that I think your professionals are going to want to address, and I'll reintroduce my client at that time. But right now, I'd like to present our engineer, Teal Jeffers.
Good evening. Teal Jeffers, Principal Jeffers Engineering Associates, 801 Orchard Avenue, right here in Runnemede. I'd like to take a moment and just talk about the site conditions, what occurred back in 2011 with the approval, and then what's currently there. As Mr. Viola mentioned, back in 2011, the approval was issued for a portion of the lot that runs along the former railroad bed. That at the time was a separate parcel lot. Block 3103 Lot 1. And as part of that, the approval was to stone a portion of the parking lot from behind the existing dealership out towards Evesham Road. As part of that approval process, that stone surface was considered an impervious surface, and a variance for lot coverage was granted by the board to permit up to 75% lot coverage where 50% is permitted. That was granted in 2011. As part of that site plan approval, the requirement was also to consolidate all the parcels that compose the Runnemede dealership into one. When that occurred, and we looked at the impervious coverage scenario, even though the impervious coverage in the back really didn't change, and I'll talk about that in just a moment, when we look at the impervious coverage now over the entire parcel, rather than being 75%, the existing condition is approximately 91.3% impervious. Again, because now it's being considered over the larger parcel. As Mr. Hernandez indicated a few minutes ago, we paved the lot. After paving and after violation was noticed or issued, the lot was surveyed so that we could evaluate impacts, drainage conditions, and so forth. And we found that the area of paving essentially went over the existing stone. But actually, when we scrutinized it, there was a reduction in paved surfaces, or reduction in the stone surfaces of approximately 1,622 square feet. So as a result of that, our lot coverage is reduced slightly from that 91.3% to 90.6%. So we are technically, even though the stone was paved, and the stone and the pavement are both considered impervious surface, just a little less area was paved and converted back to grass. So there is a slight reduction in that. We indicated on the plans that even though it's an existing non-conforming condition that we're enhancing by reducing the extent of non-conformity, we are identifying it as a potential variance if the board feels that a new variance needs to be granted for that. With regard to the pavement, we also evaluated it from a drainage perspective. At the time of the design in 2011, underneath the stone surface, there was a stormwater management basin, underground stormwater management basin that was designed and installed. When we scrutinized the design of that, it was designed assuming that the stone surface that was flowing into it would ultimately have a runoff coefficient comparable to paving. So it was actually technically designed to accommodate a paved surface versus a stone surface. So when we looked at it from that perspective, the basin has capacity to handle the paved surface without any modifications. We did find, though, with the proposed asphalt grading, that there was a small area that drained into the neighbor's yards. When the system was initially designed, or back at the design time, there was an area prior to even the stone lot being constructed of approximately 0.25 acres, I'm sorry, there was an area that was, I'm sorry, as part of the design that drained into the neighbor's yard of approximately 0.25 acres. That was part of the approved design. When we evaluated it with the paving, we found that that area was approximately 0.43 acres. So what happened is, in very simple terms, the paving adjusted the grade slightly where there's a little larger area that drained into the residential yards. We identified that as part of our stormwater evaluation, and to mitigate it, we proposed to put curbing in along the edge of the asphalt in the southern area from Evesham up into the site, and then along the northern area, essentially behind the dealership, to keep that water from going into the residential yards and have it go to the basin where it was initially intended to. One of the review comments from Mr. Bach was he recommended extending that curb all the way along that new pavement, which we'll agree to do. We have no problem with that, and we'll agree to do that. With the installation of that curbing, that mitigates the increase in the area that goes into the neighbor's yard. So now, once this curbing is installed, the area that would drain off-site is actually going to be less than what was previously approved. So we are improving that, that condition with the proposed curbing. There was also a comment in Mr. Fox's letter with regard to comment number 1 with regard to the runoff coefficients and so forth. That pertains to the conditions that were used in the design for running off into the neighbor's property. And we're going to be mitigating that and eliminating that condition as a result of putting in the curbing along the backside of that asphalt. We also identified on the plans, there's a small area right behind the dealership where there'll be a slight repaving or adjustment of paving to make sure that we have positive drainage and positive grades along the curb line, the new curb line. So they're the improvements or modifications that we found that need to occur with the paved condition to stay within the confines of the conditions of the prior approval. So just to summarize that, there was an impervious coverage variance that was granted back in 2011 for the stone surface to permit 75% coverage. That was when the lots were consolidated, that variance or that total coverage increased to about 91.4%, 91.3%. With the paved condition, we actually reduced the amount of coverage by about 1,600 square feet and reduced that coverage to about 90.6%. We were proposing some curbing to mitigate any runoff from the pavement into the neighbor's yards. And we evaluated the detention basin and found that it has ample capacity to accommodate the paved condition. There was a condition that occurred recently with regard to that real heavy rain that we had, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where everything in the town was underwater. I know down in my office, Smith Lane was over top of the curbs coming down through the neighborhood. There was water that had come over from Kid Rips, if I'm saying that correctly, into the paved area and then over to the neighbor's yard to undermine the fence and a little bit of that hillside. That was brought to our attention. We worked with Mr. Hernandez, and they went through and addressed to repair that, repairing the fence, bringing in stone, stabilizing that hillside, and addressing that. When we put in the curb, that's going to help mitigate that condition from occurring moving on. Granted, the rain event that we had the other week was astronomical, not something that we account for on a day-to-day basis. But with the proposed curbing that's going in, that'll keep that water from going across into the neighbor's property, that'll help mitigate and minimize the opportunity for that to occur moving forward. So that really summarizes the site conditions in terms of the paving and what we're proposing to mitigate some of those conditions and the variance associated with that.
Yes, if I could. In terms of the comments that are provided on page 303, by the installation of the curb along the entire area where they recently paved, I have no objection to, how should I say this? It's de minimis in terms of the change in the impact of the subsurface drainage system. So I have no recommendations or no requirements to increase the subsurface drainage system, and I appreciate the curb going the full length. In terms of the subsurface drainage system, I could not find anywhere in the borough files any maintenance plan for the subsurface system. If you have one,
I can forward a copy. I obtained a copy that was prepared in 2011. I can forward a copy.
right, if the copy prepared in 2011 is adequate, if not, I'm going to ask for a condition that if it needs to be updated by Mr. Jeffers, we can just update it. I just want to make sure we have something from Mr. Knight. And this is for maintenance of that subsurface system, how often you need to clean it, how often you need to clean your parking lot, just to make sure that that doesn't plug up with fines and silts and lose its ability to infiltrate. Item number 2 spoke to the rolled curb, which you spoke about. Item number 3, there's 2 open dumpsters at the rear of the property, right at the edge of where the paving was, right behind the building, right in that area, correct. Our recommendation is that be put in a trash enclosure. Those dumpsters are open, the right designation, the residential properties. Dumpsters should be, trash enclosure should be provided, or a trash enclosure to accommodate them.
Correct. Those dumpsters are sitting on the asphalt pavement now, and there's the white vinyl fence behind it. What we're proposing to do is, what we'll agree to do is put in a fence enclosure around those dumpsters.
That's fine, because that'll be
same location.
Yep. All we're trying to do is, contain anything that is left outside of the dumpsters or any of anything that unfortunately blows around, contain it so it doesn't go to adjacent residential. In terms of the washout that occurred along the fence line to the residential property, I did speak with Teal just before the meeting this evening. There is along the at the rear of the residential properties, the rear property line and the fence, there is approximately a 6-foot section of land that is the responsibility of Toyota. Some of the washout is there, and some of the washout actually went onto the neighboring property. So while when you're doing your work, if you were actually as soon as possible, any of that sand and such should be cleaned up.
That has been,
Okay.
that immediately the day afterwards.
I was out there
Well,
this past Friday.
That's Friday. Okay.
Yeah. So I know you, on your side, it looks great. Look on the other side.
Okay.
And that speaks to my next, that goes to my next comment, is that area was supposed to be maintained by Toyota. So again, I wasn't here for the former approval, but I don't see any access gates or anything for you to get to that 6-foot strip from your property.
Not from our property, on the other side, there's an easement that the landscaper does go through.
Okay.
And they go in there with a couple guys and.
Okay,
chainsaw.
so if my recommendation is if you can demonstrate as part of compliance that you have access to maintain that, and it's one part of the approved resolution, if there is one, that that area needs to be properly maintained by Runnemede Toyota.
Steve, how's that area identified for?
It is the area between the westerly
Westerly line?
westerly vinyl fence and the actual property line between Toyota and the residential properties. That's what I say. So during my inspection, I noticed that there was a lot of areas between where it's maintained by the individual residential property owners up to their property line in that 6-foot section, varying degrees of overgrowth and such that should be maintained by Toyota. Yes? What's this?
Asking the impervious coverage.
Okay. In terms of the impervious coverage, thank you for that. I would suggest that that be recognized as an existing non-conforming condition. It's just math at this point, because if the stone was already recognized as impervious, just by the consolidation of the two properties, the proportions have changed, but it's still the same coverage. The stone was impervious, now it's paved. The existing Runnemede Toyota, before they consolidated the former railroad right-of-way, was of an existing impervious percentage. So I would have no objection to recognize it as 90.6% impervious coverage as an existing condition and note that in the resolution. And that way, that's their starting point. That's where they're at right now, and that's what they have to be limited to.
Any questions from the board?
Like, I'm not somewhat familiar, I'm really, I don't know if I can say this, but I'd like to hear if there's any public, that, like, the people that live there, I want to see what they're feeling, you know what I mean? I mean, am I out of hand by saying?
No, we're going to hear from
Yeah, because I want to hear before I say.
Mr. Vice Chair, one other thing I just want to notice, but I think this item has been, and that goes to Mr. Mel's comment, there was, during the application process, used vehicles parked in that lot. But I believe that now, and that was a condition of the prior approval, that only new vehicles be parked in the lot. But I believe that has been remedied, and I believe the applicant is now complying with that condition of the previous approval, that only new vehicles be parked in that area.
Yes, that's
Okay, so this application in no way affects that condition of the previous approval. Only new vehicles, and that was a condition that was agreed to and put on the record in 2011.
What I remember was the application before. Where do you guys unload your cars, the new cars that come in? On the pike or on your property?
On the property.
Okay.
Steve, let me ask you something. If we proposed curbing, is that basically just going to redirect the runoff?
Yes, it's going to catch more of the runoff, so it doesn't go onto the neighboring properties. So it's going to capture the runoff from during normal rain events, you know, because I believe it's a 6-inch reveal, correct me if I'm wrong.
We're proposing a 4-inch, but we can change that to a 6-inch.
It should be a 6-inch reveal for a roll
So I was
curve.
going to say, that doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem like it's going to really make much difference. And when the rain comes in the summer, especially, it's all at once.
It will make a difference. On any rainstorm that is not jumping the curb on a residential street, it would not jump the curb here. However, extraordinary rains where we had 5.25 inches in 5 hours, which is extraordinary.
It might not be soon.
Well, it was extraordinary for our area. It was,
How big is, what's the, how steep is that area there? What's the runoff?
I'm going to defer to the applicant's engineer. In terms of going to the area along the curb, along the curb.
Along the curb, it's actually pretty gentle slope. I want to say, worst case scenario, I want to say you're probably 5 or 6%. And really what that curb is more of a belt and suspender type of approach. Along that line, the edge of pavement, it's flat enough where water will go off the edge, where that curb will help keep it on the pavement and keep it from going off that edge. So it really will act as a catchment, if you will, and keep that water on that pavement and direct it down to the inlet.
Especially during the larger rainstorm. So as grading is proposed, it's kind of all going to where it needs to go and then sort of warping towards the center, towards the inlets. So that way, if you do have a large blowing rain event, the curb will help contain it onto their property and direct it to their subsurface system.
Steve, you think 6 inches is high enough?
Yeah.
Is 6 inches the same height as a regular curb?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to caveat that. Traditionally, curbs, up until a few years ago, when the DOT changed the standard, 6 inches was the norm. 8 inches used to be the old norm, and like for Canby County, 4 inches is now the new norm. The DOT is recommended. In this circumstance, 6 inches is appropriate, and I believe 6 inches also appropriate, would not affect any of their operations. They have to open the door of a car, et cetera. But 4 inches now is
Okay.
what DOT is asking for, isolation.
Steve, when the water gets next door that basin, where does it go from there? Does it
It
go
infiltrates into the ground. And is there an overflow? I don't believe there's an overflow.
This system actually ties into the storm pipe that goes through the easement down to Oakland and then ultimately down to First Lake.
Is there infiltration of that system, or is that close by?
It is in a stone bed, there is the ability
Yeah.
for infiltration.
Yeah, so,
partial stone, partial?
so the increase in, the way I was answering the question is, the increase due to the stone or the paving of that is being accommodated by storage and infiltration, and then the pre-stone condition is kind of what's going into that pipe as an outfall.
Essentially. Any more questions? This time, I'd like to open up the meeting to the public to talk about this application only.
Good evening, everyone. Candy Cleanapper, 104 South Oakland Avenue, Runnemede, New Jersey. I appreciate you guys coming in tonight, and I was here for the original application back in 2011. And I understand you've only come on to the scene a few years ago. I can appreciate that. You made reference to there's fellows that go back in behind the property line where your fence is in between the back of our property lines and change all of every now and then. To clean up the property.
Yes.
Not so. I don't want to get in, I'm very pro-business, so I don't want to get into the tit for tat. But I took pictures on Tuesday when the bulldozers were there. So I knew something happened. So I emailed Steve and a couple of the property people and, the planning board people and Mr. Knight to find out what transpired. Because all the bulldozers and all the sand coming down. Have you visited the property behind your fence? Have you seen it with your own two eyes?
The day it happened and then when the construction guys were there and I worked there every day.
Okay, this is what's the mess that's behind people's yards. This is not my yard. This is where the bulldozers work, but all this wild stuff here, it hasn't been
That's in
maintained.
that easement, correct?
This is probably
Yeah,
behind
that's
one.
between the two properties. There's
But
one
all this stuff up here, all the way to the back of the fence, is a jungle.
Okay.
And no one has been back there to clean it up at all. 5 years ago, to go back there, when they do the high-tension wires, the tree companies come out from PSG and they cut down the larger tree branches because they have to for the high-tension wires in the backyard. So I would ask that you pay special attention a little bit more than the previous manager. I had no problem with Bob, but it never happened. It never ever happened. And Keith will tell you, there hasn't been anybody back there. That should be totally cleaned up. I mean, it's, it's in the summertime, it's just, you get bugs and this
I
and
just
that.
want to be clear, so when you say clean up, I have no issues with that. So when I have a guy go back and I pay his bill, I see that he's done something, so when they're like this high and he goes to this high, to me, that's being cleaned up. Are you asking it to be to the ground?
Yes.
Clean?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'Cause I don't
that
want
high to this high is still a non-maintained,
Okay.
It's a mess.
non-maintained area.
So we're looking to stay to the ground?
Yes.
They haven't touched it.
Okay.
I mean, again, I'm not,
No, I get you.
they haven't touched it. I mean.
So Mr. Bach wants to make that a condition of approval, and we have no objection.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, the applicant shall maintain between the westerly vinyl fence and the property lines between the applicant and the residential properties, that 6-foot strip.
And then but your understanding that it's going to be maintained at
Maintained ground level?
That's the best way
Make
to do
sure we
it.
have
That way
every
it's good.
detail in there so that there's no misunderstanding.
Well, I think maintaining at ground level will be sufficient for Mr. Knight to be able to enforce it. I just want to point out, it is an easement for maybe the utility company, but it is Runnemede Toyota's property.
I understand.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear.
It's clear to me.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would ask is, when I'm walking back and forth to the Ashland River, sometimes your lot guys, I know you can't control lot guys, that lot guys do, sometimes they'll park a vehicle across the fence where it's our fireman's access on the East Sham Road access gate, that gate.
On the far end.
You can't park something crossways. We gotta be able to go through there with a fire truck. One of your car gets on fire, we have to get through there. I know lot guys can be not, but I walk by there a lot, some lot there's a truck or something, easy place to park, doesn't park there.
Right.
But you have to fire or something.
I understand.
You can't go fire truck through there. Or go in your truck, you get it. Well, I thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
So my question is.
We have another member of the public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm the other neighbor. I'm the one that had the gun. Hi, my name is Patricia Beck, and I live at 64 South Oakland Avenue. And I was here along with Candy back in 2011. We were all against this happening, but we can't find City Hall, so we went through the had stipulations. And my concern is the water, because there's an easement that runs along there. And between those two houses, my neighbor's house, he couldn't be here, but myself, people were thinking, where the fence fell down, people were thinking that's the easement. That's our properties. It's just that our fences are separated, but that's still our properties. And that's where all the damage was, plus inside my lower half of my yard. And his basement got flooded, and his backyard was shed. Now, I only have, he took pictures, I don't know whether, I know Charlie Ramon was in her.
Yes.
Did you get the pictures from him?
Not, I'm here with the chairman with me.
Okay, because I have an old foot friend, so I looked at it, I'm not up to good technology, but, hold on, he just sent me the picture. Here's where your fence is.
That just recent speed? Yes.
This is the 2 week, yeah.
That was two Thursdays
Yeah, that's
ago.
the storm. And he took a picture, this is his backyard, all the mud showing is part of the mud. It was all up against the shed. Mine went in my shed on my driveway, because I'm on the other side. And it looked like our fences were still bowling at the bottom. I know the digger, I was out there when the construction guy was digging, and they dug some of the dirt away to alleviate the pressure from my wooden fence. But it's still bulging, but it's, they didn't want to do too much because they didn't want to damage the fence, which I understand, But my concern is, all this water, you're saying proposing a curb, that water's going to run right over that curb. Now that there's no stone, the whole idea of the 2011 proposal was because they put those big drainage systems in underground. That was supposed to be like a huge French drain. And then so the water can seep in through the ground. You blacktop something, that's just going to run right off just like in the street. So this is what exactly happened. I understand we had a bad rain, but this isn't, it only took a year, this was a year ago we did that. So it took a year to get a good rain to do this. That's going to keep washing out. From our end, we are lower, you guys are higher. And you don't realize that. You think we're high because you see our houses, we're not. We're at the lowest point. And then all that rain was supposed to go in that drain, the drainage that's all along from East Shannon Harvard Bridge, okay, into the easement that comes through there, and it runs over to my neighbor's yard, okay? Problem is, that drainage is so much, you have a lot of water going in, but the drainage easement system is the original system from God knows when it was put in. Probably can't hold, the pipe isn't probably as big, so you've got all this water coming in at one direction into a pipe, existing old pipe, that's probably not big enough, maybe, I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but this is what I gather, okay? So I just feel maybe by going back to the stone, it would be better, because it would slow down the rain into like a French drain is supposed to be. Put more drains down by Easham Road. All the drains are directly behind our backyards. What's it, 3 or 4 drains there? Because we're the lowest point. Catch some of that water coming down the pipe down Easham Road, because we get all the water coming down, remember, down our street from Easham Road. We got water coming in from everywhere. And they're going into the drainage and the avenue on the street. So I don't know what you can do about that, but that's just my idea. The curbing, you're saying for the curbing, 4 inches would be enough. If you would have seen that water come, I called 911, that's how scared I was. And it just came like a river. I thought the trees were going to come down and everything, and I didn't realize your fence was down until the next day, because I couldn't see out that far.
Just like a normal rain, like not the rain we just had, a normal rain prior to this getting
Right.
paved. Were you having any runoff problems then?
Back in the day, we had, if it was a heavy rain, real extra heavy rain, but we never had the problem like we had just recently. Yeah.
That was an extraordinary rain.
That was an extraordinary rain. I mean, we had rains where it came out and went into the street, maybe the street filled up a little bit.
Because I mean, on normal rain prior to that paving, were you having any issues with?
I didn't have any issues with that.
Yes, I think Dan has a
Yeah,
question.
when was the drain installed, or the catch basin installed?
After 2011.
That was 2011, that was part of all that project, yeah.
And when was it paved?
Last year is roughly around this time.
Okay.
I will say in review of the previous drainage report submitted in 2011, as well as Mr. Jeffers' report, they are meeting our stormwater ordinance for reductions for the 100-year storm. The intensity, even though nobody's calling it more than but the intensity that we had over a 5-hour period for the rainstorm 2 Thursdays ago exceeded the 100-year storm in terms of intensity. It might have exceeded, depending on whose argument it is, the 500-year storm. It was a short, heavy blast because rainfall intensities is usually over a 24-hour period of time. This was 5 hours, 5.25 inches, at least in Belmar, which is out. 8.34 typically is what a 100-year storm is over a 24-hour period of time. So think about over 24 hours. Think about how intense it is. So, yeah, but it was extraordinary. Areas, I'm fortunate enough to serve a lot of municipalities. Runnemede, areas that have traditionally not flooded, have flooded. Belmar, Haddon Heights, which is technically approximately 10 to 15 higher than the surrounding communities, flooded. It was mainly because of the intensity of the short duration storm, and the water had no place to go. Most of those places that flooded, within 8 hours, were not holding water anymore because they were able to naturally go. But it's an extraordinary event. But I did review what is being proposed, what the stormwater report provided by Mr. Jeffries does comply with our stormwater ordinances and DEP stormwater regulations. So we can't require them to exceed that.
I have a question, excuse me. The stormwater grates, I did take a walk back there and look, and I looked at the way it was paved, the pitch. It does pitch away from the houses to the storm grates. How many storm grates are there? Is there 1, 2, 3 along that whole period, along the home?
Behind the dealership, where the stormwater management system is located, there are 3 grates.
3 grates?
2 that are located somewhat central to the parking area. One is offset, which is on the edge of the stormwater management basin. They're all grouped here, essentially behind, just behind and to the south of the dealership building.
Yes.
And then there's one down by Euston Road.
Where are the homes? Do you point the homes
All the
back up
homes
there?
are along this northern, this upper side
So
here.
there's two on one side and one on the other?
Depends on where it's.
There are three here
Okay.
behind the dealership and a fourth one down by Euston.
In the center, everything pitches to them from both sides.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, so I wonder how well that took the water in. Anybody noticed over the storm how well it took the water?
It was mid-morning, so it was what, 3, 4, 5 in the morning when we were there. So we got there.
When you got there?
My 6 o'clock guy showed up, made me aware of the fence, and we moved. That's basically, I don't know, there was nothing there at that point.
No water was there, right?
Yeah.
All the water had
We
drained
see it at
out.
that point, yes.
See, it comes down behind your building, that's a big slope, comes down.
From our
From
property
your
there.
drive, from your drive, and I watch them drive, so you've got to get after them and speed in that thing. Now, it's all paved in, they go flying right off the freeway. And also, they're parking, like Candy said, along our side, where our backyards are. When that fence came down, you had 2 cars sitting right on the edge. Look at the cars being floated down. I can't believe they were still there. The cars were right on the edge of that strip. And that could have that would have been a big problem if that came down. So,
Let me ask you something too. Do you remember before they paved it, did you have problems with dust and stuff when they would drive on that gravel?
They didn't pave it, they had stones.
I mean, like, yeah. the
I
stone.
didn't, I never noticed anything.
Do you remember any of your neighbors having a
No,
problem?
not that I know of. Unless it was further down or something, I don't know.
Also, the first go-around we had with this, I recall that there were some issues about snow removal in the wintertime. Now, we haven't had a bad winter, but did you recall any problems recently about that?
No.
I seem to remember. Does anybody else remember that there was some issues about pushing the snow back along that easement?
That what happened, that would be prior to 2000.
It was. I just wanted to find out if that was.
Yeah, right now there's a vinyl fence there, so if there was a chain link fence, maybe that was an issue pushing up the
I think
gate.
there was a chain link.
Yeah, so there's no
There
pushing
there was no
snow.
chain link
That's what we
fence,
learned.
never a chain,
Yeah.
there was no fence at all. That was a
Okay.
railroad track.
But prior to me, I wouldn't know, but after the fact, I can say it's vinyl now. It's been vinyl since I've been there, so pushing snow up, they would just go through.
Yeah, there was some problem I seem to recall about snow removal on that back section along that easement.
Get back to the water, like you said. When you have a good rain, yes, you can't see it. It comes down and it goes out in the base, it fills the street up where our drains are. But nothing like what happened. I never had mud in my backyard. I never had mud in my shed.
I actually had 18 inches of flooding in my home in Haddon Heights. Never had anything near it. It overtopped everything, and I had all the mud and everything else, the same thing in my shed. It was an extraordinary thing.
I mean, they did thank you, they did my message.
Yeah.
They did come around the next day, knock on the door, they were a couple days breaking, and they had a couple truckloads,
Yeah.
dump truckloads of dirt, that's how much mud it was. The problem is now, the grass is coming back, though, I got no debris, it's all pieces of the road, the char, rocks,
And that was the condition of the approval. Any of the debris or anything else from the washout, the applicant is required now to address.
I mean, that's all through my yard, I mean, I got the landscapers, got some.
If it's immediately adjacent to their property and it's evident that that is their washout, they should be required to do it.
Well, it's hard, I understand it's hard to get the stones
Right.
out. I mean, that they'll send in and everything, but there's a lot of debris that ended up in the street. And I called the borough garage, but Harry said that the street cleaner was broken. So he said, if we're asking the neighbors to help out. Well, I was the only one out there pushing the broom up against the, because there were slivers of glass. there
We're
was
still
stone.
cleaning up in Runnemede right now,
Yeah.
still
The
dealing with
drainage
it.
in the street. Let me just say, so if they're going to, I don't know what you're going to do, but the curbing has to be higher or drains have to be put in.
It'll be 6 inches, which is the highest I would recommend.
But I I would suggest putting some drains down by East Sham Road. They only got one drain. We get a lot of water from East Sham Road that run down.
Is that drain connected into the same basin? The one all the way by East Road?
No, the one by Evesham Road actually goes out, ties into Evesham Road itself.
And then, you know what that does? That comes right down, Oakland Avenue, right? Am I right about that?
I'm not sure, but yeah, I think everything does come that way.
It comes down, it's downhill.
And I
I see it.
and I will say that, based on my experience, I'm also a service borough engineer, the drainage system in the borough of Runnemede is not designed for current standards. It was historically installed 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was based on good engineering practice back then. If I had to take a guess in terms of what storm event it would accommodate based on calculating, probably a 2-year storm or a 5-year storm, nothing like the 25-year storm that you have to design to now for stormwater collection systems, and nothing like a 100-year storm that you have to design the actual on-site stormwater management systems. When we get big storms,
It's gonna happen.
yeah, especially on the Logan County roads.
Steve, earlier you
Thank you.
mentioned about cleaning.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You mentioned about cleaning up those basins.
Yes, so I couldn't find it, but Gil indicated that he has a copy of a stormwater maintenance plan for the on-site stormwater collection, detention, storage, and detention system, what we'll call it, but the stormwater management system. So I just want to make sure that's part of a copy of this resolution, or part of this approving resolution, it's approved. So Mr. Knight has the ability to say, let me see your quarterly maintenance records, that it was inspected, any debris was removed, that your parking lot was, cleaned, all the typical things that is required by the DEP for those maintenance, yeah.
I forgot what
You
it
can do whatever.
You know, between our fences,
Yep.
which is your property, what Keith was saying about the debris and all
Or
that. What would you suggest putting near that? Because if you just leave dirt, that is.
No, it has to be vegetated ground cover.
It's not-
It has to be
Yeah.
planted.
Right now, all they did was put hay in.
No, it's not hay, but it's gonna take time to grow. There's stuff in there to make it grow,
Okay,
so
because
it's.
I watched a piece of board, I don't know what you put on the other side, looked like stones and pieces of concrete, or there was board or something. Because one board was on my side, and I watched it since last week, every time it rains, it comes down a little bit more. It's at the bottom of the hill now.
We'll take a look at it, I don't
Yeah.
know what specific board, but definitely.
There's a piece of
They might have did
board.
that as a temporary measure until they installed the curb.
Maybe.
Yeah, I will say that once the curbing is installed, the erosion will be significantly reduced, so they can do a ground cover. So it's not going to be, it's not expected to be sod,
Yeah.
but it's expected to be appropriate ground cover, which most likely will be grass and maintained grass.
What kind of time frame are you looking at to clear that area?
I'll be immediate with it, I mean, just a matter of scheduling, it's gonna take time to get to the level of what we're talking.
I understand that.
So, I got the same landscaper that's done, I'm sure it's gonna take them a cut and come back and do another cut. But I'll be immediate with it. I'll get started this next week, between a phone call, getting me, scheduled to come. He does it now, but I don't think it's clear.
He's not there.
Well, I don't think he's cutting it to where
Right.
we're discussing. I'm uncertain of that. So, I'm gonna have to explain to him, it's gonna have to be as to the ground as we discussed.
Correct.
Once he gets at the ground level, how often is he going to maintain that? Is he gonna have to monitor?
As necessary.
Yeah, if it's monthly or if it's 2 months, I don't know how fast it grows. I don't think a lot of it's grass. If you go kind of walk back, there's more limbs, trees, little saplings, I don't know what you call it, but if it was grass, it'd be easier. I would just go.
Well, that's what it should be. It should be like a ground cover.
Okay.
A grass, now whether you want to plant a grass or a similar ground cover.
Yeah.
But those saplings are pretty much weeds that have been left unmaintained.
Whatever's required, I'll
Yeah,
get done.
so it's until maybe you could suggest a ground cover that might be less maintenance, or typically, a good hardy grass mix is probably the easiest thing for you to maintain.
Yeah.
And also the easiest thing We don't have to worry about irrigation or anything else. The guy can go out there and just zip along.
Put a zoysia grass in. The zoysia grass is strong. That's what I have. You know,
I'm gonna
you don't have-
allow the
The zoysia
applicant,
grass
the
is
professional to choose what they believe is best for their maintenance, but they must maintain it as necessary and maintain ground cover at ground level. I
Put
think
the-
that's
put
the fair thing.
cheap grass in, that's just gonna go.
How is it determined how often the maintenance should be done on the drainage system? Is that by the whoever installed it?
The NJDEP has best management practices. They stipulate based on the type of stormwater management system, what they recommend. We typically, when we review an applicant's stormwater maintenance plan, that they are actually complying with the DEP best management practices recommendations. So typically it's quarterly in terms of inspection. It's as necessary if there's any damage, but there's also provisions, especially going to an infiltration system, how often you should be sweeping your parking lot and such. That's why we'll have the applicant provide, I'm going to have the applicant review what was done in 2011, and if you need to make amendments to it to comply with current regulations, that's going to be required. I think we're still open to the public, so we have to see if anybody. Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not your enemy. I don't want to say anything too bad about this.
Name and address. And you gotta speak in the microphone, please.
My name is Michael Britt, 18 Bray Court, Turnersville, New Jersey.
What was that?
Move
What was
back a
your
little
last name?
bit.
Deep.
Yeah, I mean, speak into the
There you
mic,
go.
not so close.
There you go.
Hello, Michael Britt, 18 Bray Court, Turnersville, New Jersey. 2018 was New Jersey's wettest year on record. Everything we think we know about what normal versus extreme flooding is changing. So whatever your measurements are for a 500-year flood, all that is going to, it would be unfair to put draconian measurements on this guy to, in the case of extreme flooding, but please be as strict as possible when considering anything about water in the future. Everything is changing, and I want to lend some energy to this woman's concerns by saying that and adding that. Please be really careful with the water.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to show you, this was my backyard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my phone is all flipped.
Well, I'm gonna chip that.
That was my backyard.
Yes, I can understand.
Keep it together. Keep it together. Yeah.
This is my neighbor's, my next door neighbor. This is his yard. And up against it.
That is consistent with what I've seen through many parts of the borough, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
This is here's where the fence came down.
And that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
And that's where the cars were parked. See, they park them against the Black Horse Pike that way, they back them in. But on our end, where the white fences, they go along parallel. And they
Well,
just
the
hit
condition of the prior approval is that they must maintain free access for emergency vehicles.
Mhm.
I don't believe there's any restrictions specifically in terms of what side they park or another. I believe it's only free access for emergency vehicles. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Seeing there's no other comments or questions about this particular issue, I'd like to close the public portion.
Second.
Public portion is closed.
And the applicant comes before us tonight for requesting a preliminary and final site plan approval to modify essentially a previously approved variance in which we granted him the right to install a stone, look like a stone driveway along the back section of the existing structure. Thereafter, this area was paved, and he presented his application tonight for us to approve that condition as it exists. You do have the right to place conditions on such an approval. I believe the conditions which were mentioned were, number one, that the applicant is going to, shall provide a maintenance subsurface drainage system plan and shall provide records of the operation and maintenance performed on such system as requested by our code enforcement official. Number two, the plan is to be revised to show and provide a 6-inch roll bituminous curb along the full length of the western line of the property line, which we had some discussion this evening with members of the immediate residential area. Number three, the applicant shall install a fence enclosure around the existing dumpsters. Number four, the applicant shall maintain the area between the westerly line of the property, which is at the vinyl fence, and the property line between the applicant and the residential properties, and which is approximately a 6-foot wide area, which is to be maintained at ground level from tonight, which I think it was indicated, the gentleman said he was going to get somebody out there or advise his landscaper, and shall maintain it at ground level in the future.
With appropriate ground cover vegetation.
With
Only because they can go out and spend. Yeah, they can kill everything, put Roundup in it, and that's not going to help the erosion. So some sort of vegetation for us. And we worked that out with the applicant's engineer.
The previous impervious coverage, which was granted in this matter back in 2011, appears to be 91.6%, even though the applicant is slightly reducing that impervious coverage. We're going to continue this approval based on the 91.6% coverage. Is that correct, Steve?
And, well, I would like it to be the 90.6.
90.6,
Yeah.
is that what it was?
Yeah,
90?
so currently existing, right now, as indicated by Mr. Jeffers' testimony, it's 90.6. We would like to maintain it at 90.6.
Okay.
Correct. Currently, it's 91.3. We're under proposed conditions. Would be
Proposed,
90.6.
okay, I'm sorry, proposed, thank
So
you.
90.6%.
Right.
Okay.
So if you, Mr. Banks, if you see any addition paving or anything else like that, that raises a red flag. So it's only what's approved on this plan.
On this plan, and this plan only.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and so you're going to do 90.6%. Okay. I believe that
Yes.
covers the conditions, so we
Yes.
just need a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Can I just say something other than really? So in 2011, when this was approved, it was stone running into these drainage systems. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then Toyota comes along a year and a half ago, and they pave over the stone, which without any permit or anything, they just did it.
Correct.
But, and maybe Teal could answer. So when that water comes down, it's still, even though it probably comes down a little quicker now because of the way the asphalt is compared to the stone, but it's still running into the drains, correct?
That's correct.
And then when you proposing to put up this 6-foot or 6-inch, they wish it was 6 foot.
That's what we need, 6
The
foot.
6-inch curbing, that will help deter, move the water so it's staying along those lines of where the drains are.
That is correct.
And Steve, you have no issue with that, like both ways it's going to function?
Correct.
Okay.
So as Mr. Jeffers put in his testimony, what was approved in 2011 of the area that was not collected by the on-site stormwater system.
Right.
When they paved it, they do have more spillage over to the residential properties. It increased from 0.25 to 0.43,
Okay.
I believe the testimony was. That curve is now going to get it back to that 0.25 as originally approved in 2011. So the curve is going to do two things. One, keep what is supposed to be, at least in terms of the approvals, or prior approvals, going into the stormwater system. And number two, it will, if you do have a heavier driving rain, it is actually going to provide a little bit of storage in the paved area before it even goes into the system. The system only can accommodate so much. It is better than, right now, even on the curb would be better than when it was stone.
Okay, that's what I want.
Yes.
Steve, there was one more question about that little triangle section of readjusting the grading there with the eastern side of the property. You said no other pavings, when we should call that point out too.
That's over top of the existing paving.
Okay.
It's not any increase, it's over top of the existing, just to give it a little bit better slope. There's a flat area there that we identified.
Thank you.
And one thing I just wanted to reiterate, just on Mr. Noah's question, is that with regard to the stone that was approved in 2011, the basin was designed at that point, the engineer counted at that point for that stone essentially acting as an impervious surface. Because when you put down a stone that has gradation to it, it'll actually become a very hard surface as it gets compacted over time.
Right.
And from a runoff perspective, it essentially acts as an impervious surface.
So you're saying over time, it's kind of conforming to what asphalt would be?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the design of the basin accounted for that ultimately acting as an impervious
Gotcha.
surface.
And yes, and that's been verified. I reviewed the 2011 report and Mr. Jeffers' report that he submitted, and it's consistent, it's compliant with our stormwater ordinances.
Okay, good.
DEP absolutely considers all stone, whether it's river rock, it doesn't matter what it is. All stone right now, based on DEP's more recent interpretation, is considered impervious.
Okay.
So that clears it up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Joyce, roll call vote?
We didn't have a motion yet, Mr. Chairman.
I make a motion.
Second.
Motion, Joyce?
Roll call. Ms. Cushing?
Yes.
Mr. Vanelli?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Mr. Oakley?
Yes.
Mr. Ranieri?
Yes.
Ms. Dodds?
Yes.
And Mr. Lee?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you guys. Very much.
My guys couldn't be it. Probably more. I'm going to need you to go out there and specifically show them. So this way, he's all. No, but what I want to do, well, let's get as much as we can. I'll have the landscape back there at work. I have them come over. I have a lot of tenants that come over. We handle that area. So
They're gonna have a hard time now.
well, I get it. I expect
Well, I didn't know it was all after they cleaned up in the mud.
Right now, they just the system, they try to build it.
Yeah, you got my number. I mean, this, I'm sorry. You left it with me, I think. Thank me for the guys being over there.
Yeah.
I think it was you. That morning, I got.
Look into the now. I know her.
At this point in
Because I bring my
time,
car.
Lydia.
Lydia. I come bring my car.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you mind if I steal my client?
Oh, yeah, sure.
if anyone from the public
Take care.
has anything that you want to speak on any matter whatsoever, please come forward, state your name and address, and we'll hear what you have to say.
Seeing no one from the public wishes to speak, I make a motion to close the public.
Motion by Mr. Ockley, second by Mr. Kuchar, all in favor?
Aye.
Anything else from the board to discuss, any issues, concerns?
What about, it's really not a concern, but I see it every day, is that the winter? It's like a farm somewhere. I don't know if you've done anything, or can we cut it?
And Bill,
Yeah, that's
It's a disgrace.
being handled by the administrator and the solicitor as far as, because of the volume of work that's involved.
yeah, we can try to.
Oh, yeah.
Has anybody heard anything about the plans?
Have you seen it?
I had nothing.
No,
There was a truck back, and I had to drive through the parking lot last week, and you couldn't see more than 3 feet.
Well, I use that UPS drop-off there all the time, and it is just, I mean, if I pull in here, you couldn't see me until I pull out.
Make out. All right, so I guess Keith, who's handling that? Mr. Diorio?
Yes. That should be turned over for our public works.
Would you just, would you just send them an email and just tell them that's some concern, but there's a slight triangle problem now. At this point in time, slight triangle concern, people can't see pulling in and out, somebody gets hit, they're going to get hurt.
The fire marshals also cited the property, as well as I cited them under the mobile housing.
You know, I think they're in Florida, to be honest with you. I think the owners are in Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis now?
Yeah,
But we,
Fred's got a new address.
Fred and I tried to get in contact with him last week.
Okay.
And every email for everyone that we had something for came back as
Ongoing.
no longer, it actually said on there, and we are I am no longer with the company. Please cease sending
Good old
emails.
out of office reply, huh? Well, as long as we keep the residents safe and we just send them a bill, that's all I care about. You know, I mean, fix it, send them a bill, they sell the property, they gotta pay the bill, so. Anything else we gotta go through? All righty, well then, without entertaining a motion to adjourn at 8:25.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Ockley and Mr. Ranieri, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, thank you very much.